we're given the graph of a function f, and we're given that g is the integral from 0 to x of f. Now in part A, we're asked at what values of x do the local maximum and minimum values of g occur.
Like a revolution.
Well, by definition, it follows from the fundamental theorem of calculus that f is the derivative of g. So f equals g prime. Now, the local minimum maxima occur when the derivative changes sign. Looking at the graph, we see that we therefore have local minimum. G has local minima
Can you break that down for us real quick?
when x is equal to 3 or 7. This is because the derivative g prime, which is f, changes from negative to positive. And likewise, g has local maxima
What about the Burj Khalifa?
at x equals 1 and 5, where f changes signs from positive to negative.
The only Khalifa I need to know, there's two. There's Mia and Mia. Burj Khalifa. Throw on cushion orange juice and jack off to Mia Khalifa. Do you hear Mia Khalifa made $100 doing porn? She made barely any money. Yeah.
Now, the graph starts at one point and ends at another point. So the graph g does not extend beyond. So even though f equals 0 at the endpoints, we don't consider endpoints to be the local extrema. Then in part B, we're asked where g attains its absolute maximum value. So where's the maximum for the absolute value of g, in other words?
She's okay. Yeah, she's got big old titties.
Well, again, f is the derivative of g. And when g prime is positive, g is increasing, and when it's negative, g is decreasing. Now notice that overall, from x equals 0 to 9,
Bangladesh, Sri Lanka.
well, let's break it down between intervals. So
Yeah, like MIA.
from x equals 0 to x equals 1,
I like that song.
we see that g prime is positive, so g is increasing. And from x equals 1 to 3,
That was a great trailer. Maybe you want to smoke some weed to that.
well, we see that
That movie's good.
g prime is negative, and in fact it's so negative that g decreases more than it increased from 0 to 1. Now from x equals 3 to 5,
Guantanamo Bay? James Adobe is in that as Bush.
well, we see that g prime is positive, and it's therefore increasing. In fact, it's so positive that it increases, g prime so positive that g increases more than it decreased.
Wow.
But like in a nice, respectful way.
I'm getting a lot of emails.
He's a nice gentleman, but
In the
he's got eyes for the crowd.
Respect.
last interval.
Oh, did it? Oh, it was about Queens, right?
Then, from x equals 5 to 7,
Well, you can't replace King of Queens, dude. They try to do it again. Lightning only strikes once.
well, this time we see g prime is negative, so that g is decreasing. And it's so negative that g decreases more than it increased.
They're just like, you look like you know what I mean.
I'm gonna make a story. It's just gonna be rich guys trying to be different.
And they all hate
In the
each other,
last
and no one
interval.
understands why.
They all hate each other, and then they all band together with a Jewish guy. There's like
Now
a-
finally,
there's that
from x
illusion
equals
of
7 to 9,
of
we see that
togetherness.
g prime is positive. Therefore, g is increasing. And in fact, g prime is so positive that g increases more than it decreases.
I try not to be like too obnoxious with the hipster. I don't ride a unicycle around their neighborhood. It might not be as bad.
In the last interval, from 5 to 7.
Yeah, I just try to dress and act like what they expect out of
So we see that overall, from x
life.
equals 0 to 9,
That's doing the wrong
That's
thing.
too bad.
That's doing the wrong thing loud.
I whispered dead
I
ass.
pass them on the street and I say, "How are you doing? Good afternoon."
the graph of g moved a net amount upwards. So it increases
There's a
a
guy
net
that I
amount.
walked past when I walked my dog. And his car had.
And therefore, it follows that
Stop.
g should be at its highest point at the end, and so the absolute maximum of the interval
No, she shouted out the window at me.
occurs at x equals 9.
She was threatened. She was incredibly threatened by me for my terrifying middle finger, which made her quake in her boots.
Man, when that lady called you a bitch ass N word.
Then in part C, we're asked on what intervals the function g is concave downward.
Yeah. Oh yeah. There's older women really know that they can give it to me.
Once again, f is the derivative of g,
Out and about.
and the concave down parts of g are the intervals where g prime is decreasing. So these are the intervals where f is decreasing. So we see that f is decreasing, and therefore g is concave downward on the intervals, well, it appears to be from 1/2 to 2, as well as from 4 to 6, and finally from 8 to 9.
Then we stopped at the red light. She's like, "I don't want to see your white ass." And I was like, "Oh, I'm sorry."
So there's 3 separate intervals.
I thought it was funny.
You're right.
Finally, in part D, we're asked to sketch the graph of the function g.
Go jack off to a Chinese teenager. Yeah, you ever show your ass to anyone?
Yeah, all the time.
Well,
I've showed you guys my ass.
for starters, we know right away that g of 0 by definition is 0, since the two limits of the integral are the same. So the curve passes through the origin. From part A, we know the points of the local maxima and minima, and we also know the concavity of the graph from part C.
I saw them from the back.
They're like pinballs, but in like. Pardon me, sire.
And so we follow the previous parts.
Tiny dick, small balls, long atrophy.
Visually, it's like, his thighs don't touch. He has a
I have thigh gap.
Well, it looks something like
Some
this.
people really covet.
Your ass was high and tight, I'll say that.
So I'm starting out at the origin,
It's not a bad.
and then
It only serves
I'm going to increase,
those high and tight.
and in fact I'm going to be increasing concave up until about 1/2.
Is that coveted? I would be a coveted twink in the community.
And then at 1/2 we start changing to concave downward, like this, until I reach a local maximum at 2.
They respect my tactics.
Sorry, not at 2. At 1 is where the local maximum is.
My strategic awareness. My tactical.
Until we start decreasing until I reach,
Oh damn! You just go in on.
I would say, about
Oh, you got police story 1 and 2. Yeah.
3/2, where we cross the x-axis, and also we change from concave down back to concave up.
Really? But he has a crush on Amber. So
And then we
maybe-
decrease all the way until a local minimum at about x equals 3.
John Q. Tell him you're cool.
And then we start increasing until we reach the x-axis again
He's cute.
at about 4,
Have you seen Gross Point Blank?
where we change again from concave upward to concave downward. And we keep increasing to reach a maximum at about x equals 5. This maximum is going to be a little bit taller than the previous maximum. And then we start decreasing until we reach about the x-axis once again, around x equals 6. And there we change from concave down back to concave up. And we keep decreasing until we reach a minimum at about x equals 7. This minimum is going to be lower than the previous minimum. So we go all the way down like this. And finally, we're going to increase until we reach the x-axis again around x equals 8. And then we'll change from concave up back to concave down. And we'll increase until we reach a local maximum about x equals 9. And this is going to be taller than both previous local maximums. And so the graph looks something like this.